President Donald Trump has removed Brad Parscale as his campaign manager for 2020 and replaced him with Bill Stepien. But who is Bill Stepien, and why was he chosen for Trump's campaign? Well, we're going to get into that today on this catching up episode of the Tonic Accord. Hello everyone, let's just get right into it. Bill Stepien. He is now the new campaign manager for the Trump 2020 campaign. We've seen the last few months that Trump's polling has not been looking good. Biden has been increasing, especially in battleground states. And as we've mentioned before in this podcast, now states like Arizona, Florida, and Texas are intense battlegrounds that perhaps weren't viewed as such before. So with Trump slumping in the polls for now, he has decided to replace his campaign manager and kind of shift tone. And we're going to find out why he chose Bill Stepien and perhaps what it means for this future of the campaign. So let's get into Bill Stepien. This Bill Stepien has been a political operative in the Republican Party for a few decades now. Let's just go over some of his credentials here. He was on Anthony Bucci's state campaign in 1997, Bob Frank's U.S. Senate campaign in 2000. He was the political director for 2004 Bush-Cheney campaign in the state of New Hampshire. But most importantly, he managed Bill Baroni's 2003 bid for New Jersey State Assembly. It doesn't sound like much, but in a certain year, he was the only Republican to oust a Democratic incumbent. So it shows that he at least has the political cunning to turn a seat that perhaps wasn't turnable before. Unfortunately, though, he is probably most known for his involvement in Chris Christie's campaign and administration, and specifically the Fort Lee lane closure scandal. At one point before the scandal, Chris Christie called him the best Republican operative in the country, but then not much later, Christie said he lost confidence in Stepien's judgment. Why? Why did he lose confidence in Stepien's judgment? Well, let's talk a little bit about the Fort Lee lane closure scandal, and it's complex and there's a lot of gray area. So I don't want to make any too bombastic claims, but it certainly is a blight on the record of not only Chris Christie, but also Bill Stepien. Stepien was involved in a romantic relationship with Bridget Kelly, who was actually Stepien's replacement for Chris Christie's chief of staff in 2013. He was involved in emails to Bridget Kelly regarding the closure of the Fort Lee lanes. The Fort Lee lanes was a bridge going across Jersey to the town of Fort Lee. Fort Lee's mayor was a Democrat who then did not support Chris Christie's 2013 gubernatorial race. It is believed to be an abuse of power that members of Chris Christie's staff ordered these lanes to then be closed as kind of a revenge. Bill Stepien was even quoted as saying, to Bridget Kelly regarding the lane closures as good. This will send him a message, referring to the Democratic mayor. Now, it is likely that Stepien didn't have much to do in the actual decision process. I do want to make that clear. But Chris Christie said that, quote, "I was disturbed by the tone and behavior and attitude of callous indifference that was displayed in the emails by my former campaign manager, Bill Stepien." Bill Stepien, in the subsequent trials regarding this scandal, was mentioned over 700 times in regards to emails to various staff encouraging the lane closure. But again, he was not actually involved in the decision process, most likely just a supporter of the decision, and he himself was not found guilty of any charges. Bridget Kelly, however, his ex-girlfriend at the time, was indicted and found guilty of 9 different counts, but the Supreme Court in 2020 eventually overruled the convictions in the Bridgegate scandal, saying that it was an abuse of power, but failed to meet the requirements the prosecution laid out for federal fraud crimes. So that was the issue, was the prosecution. It was kind of hard to nail down what exactly the crime was when you're closing down lanes for political revenge. They decided to go with, they tried to nail them on some wire fraud and fraud. It wasn't strong enough. So after 6 years after the trial, the Supreme Court did overrule those convictions. I want to make that clear. But it's kind of a stain on all those involved. And even Chris Christie, he actually slumped in the polls dramatically after this scandal. One person died of a cardiac arrest on the bridge, and paramedics were not able to get to him because of the lane closure. So, let's call a spade a spade. Yes, there was not official charges on the fraud aspect, but the Supreme Court did mention in its opinion that it was an abuse of power. So there's an abuse of power used to close lanes for political revenge against a Democratic mayor that led to someone dying, or at least not being able to get the help that they needed at the time. As well as a massive other traffic jam, and I'm sure a not a fun day for all those trying to get across that bridge. So Bill Stepien, again, not directly involved in the decision process, but the emails he had basically said that this was a good idea. It was a way to get revenge against the mayor. It was going to send him a message. This is someone that supported abuse of power at that time. Now, again, people can change. This was years ago. He was not officially convicted. So what has he been up to since then? Well, he in 2016, he was brought onto the Trump campaign as just kind of a political advisor. Jared Kushner eventually promoted him up into to higher rings of the White House, and he decided to create something with another White House lawyer in 2018 called the consulting firm National Public Affairs. National Public Affairs then went on to promote Trump's policies among Republicans in the country, as well as trying to flip some blue dog Democrats in Virginia and West Virginia. And they were also paramount into getting one Democrat against impeachment. So he has an ability, as we've seen, from all the way back to the Bill Baroni's bid for NJ State Assembly up into the impeachment process. He has an ability to flip Democratic opinion and flip Democratic seats. And obviously that's going to come into play, especially if Trump is moving down the polls, in places like Ohio, Florida, perhaps places that still can flip back. He's going to be, the idea is going to be, he's going to be more effective at doing so. He's also a little bit different than the past campaign manager, Brad Parscale. Brad Parscale was a lot more open on media interviews. He would even, show off his donations to his own campaign, the Trump campaign, on Facebook. He was a lot more less media shy. Whereas the new campaign manager, Bill Stepien, some regard to him as allergic to press attention. And I think that's really interesting. I think that, one, if you do have a candidate like Trump, who is so, vocal and always in the media, perhaps it is better to have your campaign manager, the real political operative that understands and knows how to flip seats, to flip opinions. Perhaps it is better to have him off the camera, focus on the candidate, not the campaign manager. He's more of a behind-the-scenes guy, and whose political cunning has proved himself, but he also has a little bit of a scandal. Perhaps I've also thought that that's maybe another reason why his ability to avoid scandal and kind of dodge that scandal back at the Fort Lee lane closure. Maybe that's something Trump needs to learn a little bit more about. He's certainly had quite a few scandals over his presidency, and he has gotten out of them. But again, that's in a Republican-controlled Congress and Senate for most of this term. If we do have a Trump presidency, but with a Democratic-controlled Congress and Senate, it's going to be a lot tougher for Trump to get out of some of these scandals, and maybe he has something to learn from Bill Stepien. It is interesting to see, though, that Bill Stepien is also very data-driven. He had a few jobs after his kind of, boot from New Jersey politics after the scandal. He landed on his feet with a few different data companies working in politics. So that might come into play as well, trying to update the technological aspect of Trump's campaign to be more data-driven, to be more behind the scenes. To be less focused on media attention from the campaign manager perspective. Of course, Trump is always going to be focused on media attention, and that's smart because that's what got him elected in 2016. I would argue. But obviously the fact that even just there is a change in campaign manager in mid-July goes to show that the Trump campaign knows that it's circling the drain, or at least was heading that way, and needed to make a change. So we'll see how this pans out as far as what Bill Stepien can do for the Trump campaign to try and turn polls around. It'll be interesting to see how they maybe shift their approach on attacking Biden. Especially with the debates, if there are debates, given, with COVID, we really don't know what's going to happen with this election regards to the normalcy of its operation. But we've seen Trump wear a mask recently for the first time in public on camera. And there's a little bit of a shift I'm starting to see, because I do think Trump realizes that, he's down 4 to 5 points to Biden in Arizona. He's only up 1 point in Texas, which is within the margin of error. He has to be scared in his boots if he wants to get reelected. And I think this is, from a political operation standpoint, this is a good call. You change your campaign manager, you go for a new approach. You don't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if it is broke, you got to fix it. And that's what they're doing here. But it is interesting to just know and note that Bill Stepien has been active in the Republican Party for decades. He is known for his political cunning. He's known for being a little bit behind the scenes, but he also was wrapped up in a pretty bad scandal back in his New Jersey days. So with that, let us know your thoughts on the new campaign manager. Do you think he's going to start turning things around for Trump or not? Do you like him? Do you not like him? Or perhaps there was another candidate you thought was better. Let me know any of your thoughts. Catch us on the Tonic Accord at Podbean, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks again.